Every single video on this channel is going to make you smarter. That's why you should subscribe and hit the bell icon.
And by the way, the culture of the Indian Army is also multitude of cultures. Multitude of, and when I'm saying this, most of the army officers and to a certain extent army brats will understand what I'm saying. For example, if you are commissioned into, let's say, a certain battalion, I don't want to name it because, people know what I'm talking about. You are expected to do a lot of ma bhan because that's the
Culture.
language of those people, even to appreciate something. I don't want you to beep it out.
It's all good, sir.
So, whereas if you get commissioned into, say, the Madras battalion, your way you treat the troops has to be very, very different from the way you treat troops, let's say, in a Sikh Paltan. They're very different cultures. So,
What's the underlying cultural trait that ties all of these together?
that's a very good question that you asked. I genuinely believe this is something that corporations can learn from the army. Really, they can. So if you look at the Indian Army, there are multitude of regiments. Each regiment, so we are a caste composition army, as you're aware. So the troops are taken from a certain area. So you have the Gurkha, Bihar, Jat, Maratha, all of these are taken. Of course, you have all India castes also. There are certain, like Special Forces is all India caste. There are certain armored regiments which are all India. My own battalion was all India caste. All composite. But you have certain, Now each one of these regiments has a different culture. They have a different culture, they have a different food habits are different. Madras battalion much more rice oriented, Northern battalion is much more wheat oriented. All of this is different. Everything is different. The way they dress, the way they talk, the way the orders are passed, everything is different. But when the chief of army says half turn right, 1.5 million people know it's 45 degrees. There's no debate in that. So it's a very interesting phenomenon that corporations should study, that while you have independent cultures in each of the departments, you can have that. I worked in Reliance, say for example, the culture of the oil refining area is very, very different from, say, retail. Very different from Geo. Culture is very different. But there's a common vocabulary. So when the common vocabulary is half turn, nobody has a debate. It's 45 degrees. नहीं यार 22 नहीं है, 45 है, 45 नहीं, 56 है. It's not. It's one. So if you are able to create a common operational vocabulary, you can allow multitude of cultures to flourish because you do need different cultures. So I'll give you an example, and I think so when I was working with Reliance, you had in the same campus the oil and gas, establishment and also Geo, right? So very interesting because I used to head risk and security and new ventures there. And when I joined there, I was fascinated that if you have to go in the campus, Shardul knows it, that you pretty much have to swipe your card everywhere. At every door, you have to swipe the card. Now, so much so that security teams used to take pride in the fact that, kind of, that when people go home, वो घर में भी bathroom में ऐसा करता है because it's so ingrained into their head. Now, when the Geo crowd came, and we are a young crowd, the average of Geo, as you're aware, is pretty much your age and a young leader and all of that, they found this very, very restrictive. Why am I in a bloody prison camp? Why do I need to do this everywhere? And it was like felt that you don't trust us, you don't believe us. Why do you have to do all of this all the time? Now, this is clearly a mismatch of cultures, and they don't know, they are perceiving something as bad because they don't know the origin of the reason behind that. The origin of the reason is in an oil and gas refining environment, it's a very, very high security environment because the slightest of leaks can explode the whole refinery. Care has to be, like, I don't know if you know this, that vehicles that go into the refinery, they have special equipment fitted in the exhaust so that no spark comes out. Your boots are checked to make sure there are no nails. It's to that degree. There's no question of carrying a lighter or anything. No sparking stuff can be carried. More importantly, as the head of risk of a refinery, I need to know where each and every individual is. Because let's say there is a fire and I have to bring down a firewall to protect 2,000 people, which will kill 50 people inside. And I have to take that call. I need to know exactly where each and every person is. Now that DNA, which requires you to put where exactly, insurance claim करने के लिए भी पता होना चाहिए ना, where you were. Let's say there is a, God forbid, there is an accident and bodies are burnt beyond recognition. The only record is where you were, right? The only record that you were in that plane and your wife can claim insurance after the crash happens is the passenger manifest. Your dead body is not found. So, sorry to be macabre, but that is the culture origin. Now, it's being viewed by another group as a very, very totally like a prison and all that. So it's very important to realize that a conglomerate will have multiple cultures in multiple divisions because the requirement of that job is. I'll give you an example. I used to be CEO of a company called Automart India, which is now known as First Choice. It was a startup at that point of time. It was all about .coms and this and that and all. T-shirts and coming in shorts to office, like pretty much your ambience here, was like, okay, it was fine. Matter of fact, it was expected to do that. But then I used to head another company called Mahindra Special Services Group, which was much more about high-end security, the men in black. And there you had to be in a suit and a tie always, because that's the culture of the service that you're delivering, right? So I think organizations can have, and as the Indian Army has, multitude of working cultures and their own emotional cultures. But when it comes to operations, they have one common vocabulary. So you can have multiple cultures so long as you have a common denominator of a common vocabulary. I think that's a great lesson to be learned from.